Steven Universe is a show that I have a really long and complicated history with. I don't want to call it one of my favorite shows. I think that would be kind of watering down my opinions about the show too much. Back in 2015 which was nearly 10 years ago now that I'd actually say it out loud, I started a series called Crystal Sins, many of you may know, which also didn't give a good idea of what I actually think about the show either. Overall, I still really enjoy Steven Universe, but there are things that I think are fantastic and other things that I think make the show worse overall. My plan with this series is to put all of that under a microscope, episode by episode, just analyze everything that I can. No matter how many times that I rewatch these episodes, I always find something new. No matter how much I talk about it, I feel like I always have something to say. There's always something to discuss about this show, and that's why I love it. So what better name for this series than Gemology, the literal study of gems? If you're here for a scathing, negative review of the show, you're in the wrong place. The same goes for anyone looking for me to sing the constant praises for this show. It's not going to happen either. I'm here to give my honest opinions and point out some things that maybe you haven't noticed, or maybe you have and you're a bigger fan of the show than me. Anyway, here's episode 1, Gem Glow. The season 1 intro. I don't know how many people prefer this one, actually. It's interesting that Steven only gets one line where he sings lead vocals, and then saying his name at the end, of course. The gems get most of the lead parts, which I chalk up to Steven's voice actor being young and inexperienced at the time, which is fitting for how the show starts out. I also tried to find some sort of symbolism or character correlation with the colors of the scenes, but no, the colors are just pretty. We got a lot of townies in the intro, too. There's Greg and Connie, obviously, Lars and Sadie, the cool kids, Kiki and Nanafwa, Mr. Smiley, and Onion. Sorry, I had to. There's gonna be some jokes that bleed over from Crystal Sins, and I'm not sorry. Also, what the fuck is up with Sadie? Looks like she's seen a fucking ghost.
This can't be happening! This has to be a dream! Lars, please tell me I'm dreaming!
You want to talk about characters' first lines? Actually, do you want to talk about the first scene of the whole show? This is just the worst way they could have gone and introduced a main character. If you stop this show right at this scene, your impression of Steven would be that he's a petty, whiny kid who complains when things don't go his way. It's not that it's bad characterization, it's just the wrong characterization. Even in season 1, as obnoxious as Steven gets, he's not like this the whole show.
Get off me, man, I'm stuck in here.
And there's a, I would say, half-good first line. Lars is a dick, that's his character. He doesn't want anything to do with Steven's nonsense.
I'm sorry, Steven. I guess they stopped making them.
And then Sadie's is just as bad as Steven's. You don't get anything from this line, but maybe you do. I don't know. She's working retail. That's just what you say when you work retail. It doesn't tell me anything about her character, though. Lion Liquors gets a cooler that big in a donut shop? No wonder Cookie Cat went out of business. Damn. Also, this soda fountain only has 4 flavors. I bet it's Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, and that last one better be Dr. Pepper.
Why don't you make some with your magic belly button?
How much do the townies really know about the gems and magic in general? I can get from the way Lars is saying that Steven probably just gloats about having magic powers despite not ever having used them, but like, the crystal gems deal with monsters and stuff in town, right? So the townies must know about magic a little bit. I'm not trying to make a point here, I'm just thinking out loud. Steven's humming the Cookie Cat song that he sings later. Kind of a cool, simple little detail. This is a really cool shot. If you were watching this show for the first time and you noticed this, you would immediately have a ton of questions. Why is there a giant statue here? Who built it? Why? How old is it? Who is the statue depicting? Why does she have 2 faces and 6 arms? Why does Steven live in it? I know that the temple was there in the intro, but this is the first time I think that you really can tell that Steven lives there. Let's talk introductions again. This is how you do character introductions. Despite only Amethyst getting a line, you can get an idea of who all these characters are together. They're fighters, they're experienced, and they get into weird magical situations. Amethyst's first line is just chef's kiss. It characterizes her perfectly. All this crazy shit is going on in Steven's house, and all she has to say is,
Sup, Steven?
I'll talk about their weapons and fighting styles in a little bit, but I want to point out the different unique sound effects they each have. Sound design is one of this show's greatest strengths, and it perfectly is put to use in these weapon sounds. There's something about them that just sounds like they're made of magic, like they're not just real objects in the real world. Just take a listen. I bet you didn't know crying breakfast friends was an episode 1 thing, did ya? Alright, I'm not gonna do first lines for the gems other than Amethyst, because they get their own introductory scenes that kinda takes that place. Not to mention the first lines they have in this scene are just kinda dull. In this one shot, you can see the glow stick that comes back in Bubble Buddies. As far as I know, it's only in this shot and doesn't come back until then. This is also the first of many times that they do the star eye thing that's kinda unique to this show. I think it happens way too often for me to point them all out. That would just get annoying.
We went out and stole a bunch.
I went back and paid for them.
Where do the crystal gems get money? I know that's something I asked back in Crystal Sins all those years ago, but I still don't know. I'll be on the lookout for any cash changing hands throughout the show. Yeah, I'll fucking mention it. The Cookie Cats song is foreshadowing a bunch of future plot and parallels Rose Quartz's backstory. I get it, I've heard it a trillion times, and if I don't mention it, then you people are gonna have a conniption in the comments.
Try and summon your weapon.
Anyone else think it's kind of weird that it's implied that the easiest gem ability is summoning a weapon? When you get farther into the show, there are plenty of gems that don't use, or maybe even don't have weapons. Maybe I'm looking into it too much. Maybe I'm giving the writers too much credit by assuming they knew all that was going to happen when they were writing episode 1. Alright, Pearl's introductory scene. Even her going first shows that she's quick to take charge when she can. The way she explains her technique shows that she's precise and elegant. She's not a natural-born fighter, so she puts a lot of thought and effort into summoning her spear. But she's experienced enough that she's an expert at it.
Did Pearl tell you the pedal thing?
I like this line. Weirdly enough, I think it's my favorite line in the episode. It's just enough to tell you that Amethyst is much younger and more inexperienced than Pearl, and that she tried to teach her the same way. Also, Amethyst's introduction. First of all, note the location they picked. Pearl picked this spot with significance and beauty. There was clearly some thought put into it. Meanwhile, Amethyst probably didn't pick this spot behind the donut shop next to a dumpster. Amethyst and Pearl are character foils. She improvises, she's impulsive, she's sloppy. Of the 3 introductory scenes, I think this one gives the best characterization. And finally, Garnet's introduction. If you're at all familiar with this show, you'll probably remember that Garnet had a really rough start at the beginning of this show, and this scene kind of reflects that. All you can really tell about Garnet from this scene is that she's more than she seems. Talking about cosmic fucking universe bullshit. It's really hard to pin down what this scene is trying to show the viewer. In general, I think the writers didn't know what to do with Garnet before Jailbreak. This is the only scene, I think, in the whole series where Garnet summons her gauntlets with a completely different sound. Which is really weird because the correct sound was used when she unsummoned them earlier in the episode.
The whole thing was my idea.
It was everyone's idea.
2 shots, my bad.
I mean, you're one of us, Steven. We're not the crystal gems without you.
I think this uplifting talk the gems have with Steven wouldn't really work without the music. That's another strength this show has, good background music. Otherwise, this scene would just be the gems awkwardly lying to him so he doesn't cry. More evidence toward my theory of the writers not knowing what to do with Garnet, with her having no lines in this scene.
Steven, it's a shield.
This line always bothers me. Why does Pearl say this? Is she stupid? It's not for the viewers, the ones with functional eyes at least. It's almost like she forgot what Rose Quartz had for a weapon. Maybe she delivered it differently. It is a shield, as if she wasn't sure but suspected it would be the same. Oh, can't have that sticking around for an actual fight. This show has a problem with making the characters really dumb as soon as action starts happening. It doesn't happen all the time, but enough that I can talk about it when it does. This scene could have been over in a second if the gems just summon their weapons, but they don't, because the episode needs Steven to destroy his Cookie Cat freezer. In a few of these shots in this scene, you can see the low-res design that they use for the long shots throughout the show. I knew some people who hated this look, but I don't really have an opinion on it. It doesn't bother me. It's definitely better than that cracked-out Sadie from the intro. God damn, why did that animation look so good? Admire this smear frame with me real quick. Yeah, that's nice.
Cookie Cat Crystal Combo Powers, activate!
Yeah, this is definitely one of those things that would have turned a lot of people off of this show early on. This kind of stuff sticks around only for a few episodes, but it's enough episodes that people got a chance to form their opinion and move on to something else. Alright, I'm going to talk about weapons finally. This shot is also really cool, so I'll leave it up while I talk. If it's not obvious already, the Gems' weapons are reflections of their personality. Pearl has a spear, something that has a fine point and needs precise handling, which reflects her carefulness and elegance. It's also a weapon that can keep enemies at a distance, which is more important to know once you find out that Pearl wasn't originally a fighter and wouldn't have any need for a weapon. Amethyst has a whip, which is not as powerful as something like a sword or anything really solid and rigid. If you aren't careful, it can do plenty of collateral damage or miss entirely, reflecting her impulsiveness and tendency to do half-ass things. Garnet has gauntlets, which are made for hand-to-hand combat, getting really close to her foes, which is, for lack of a better term, intimate, maybe personal. It makes sense when you learn more about Garnet being a fusion later in the series and what goes into that. This star wipe is iconic at the end of most episodes, so much so that it's removed in certain episodes for a certain effect. I'll point it out in the future because there's usually a good reason story-wise when it's not there. I think this episode is a pretty mediocre first episode to a show. It ticks all the boxes for a first episode. It shows the main characters, it shows their powers, and it shows what kind of stuff to expect in the rest of the series, but is that enough? I say no. Steven is annoying, Garnet has no personality, and when there's a fight, it almost seems like these magical characters are completely useless. This episode is like a fine mesh screen. People who don't like the episode are going to get filtered out here and now, and people who see the potential are going to keep watching. I am going to keep going, though. I still love this show, and like I said at the beginning, I keep finding things to talk about every time I come back. I don't know what else really to say at this point other than to like and subscribe to help the algorithm. Maybe if I get going, I might be able to make these every week, like back when I used to make Crystal Sins. I'll tell you, this is way more fun when I don't have to try to be negative all the time. Anyway, next episode is Laser Light Cannon. I'm excited.